Hi colleagues, good day and welcome to my session which is related to the test automation and the DevOps practice. So today we'll speak about the regression minimization with the new tool which we have been open sourced a year ago named Drill4j, and I will describe you how you can minimize your regression set by means of the test-to-code mapping. So who is this guy? My name is Dmitry Gumenyuk and I'm a project manager and I'm driving the product portfolio within the DevTestSecOps practice and having the Java development background in the past. So currently I have 5 products in portfolio which helps you to speed up the test automation and brings it to the new level, basically helping to resolve your main DevOps challenges. So today we will speak about regression and how we can minimize it with the value and how you can benefit from it. So the question is like, what's the problem about the regression? Why we do need to minimize it and somehow spend the time for it? So the main issue and the main challenge which we have in the DevOps is actually the speed. So with the natural growth of your test automation within your software life cycle, you start to implement more and more test cases, which means you need to spend more and more time and effort to execute these results and receive the results. So following this natural growth, you have more and more these test cases, which usually brings you to the course of the modern software where developers have too many tests to run prior to the code check-in. So in this situation, they start to follow pretty costly coping strategy, not to run and not to execute all the test cases within the infrastructure or right on the local machine right after the commit, but basically shift it to the integration environment and rely on the results from the integration environments. And usually it comes to the situation that when it becomes true, some of these test cases often start to fail, to fall into the despair and start to return in irrelevant results. So even in the worst situation, some of the developers just decide to remove such a test cases out of the pipeline just because they give the slow feedback, the feedback is irrelevant, and nobody can trust this. And the most common and the most known approach is the testing pyramid, which asks you to run the most fastest test cases with the highest priority and leave the longest test cases for the past. But once you start to work with this and then address this challenge, one can say like, okay, let's just take the coverage and work with the coverage. But the issue about the coverage is that it's super plain metric, which doesn't give you much of the information, but just know the information how much of your test code was covered by your test. But what if we can make it more actionable? And in this regards, we can use so-called coverage change and convert it into the actionable feedback. So just imagine the case if we can know what part of this code change was was a new code and which part of it just like modified code. If we have this information, we definitely know what part of the code was modified and what part of the code was added, which gives us the information and the evidence like how good we are in testing of our new code or newly introduced code and how we good in retesting of existing code. And all this brings us to the theory of the test impact analysis and test gap analytics. So once you have the test cases, you can see them on the left and the application code on the right. If you can know and collect information which particular methods were triggered during the test case execution and store this information, you can use it later for back engineering, like defined. Okay, if I know that this particular test case will execute that particular methods within the application, if I know that, I also can know that I need to execute those test cases in order to check that particular method. And we call this action as test to code mapping, which helps us to bring the magic into the on the stage. So how test to code mapping can resolve the issues, how it can address your challenge. So let's see it in a basic representation. For instance, you have the application with a list of the methods which were implemented by the developers. So once you start the list of the test cases or your regression suite against the application, Drill4j can record the mapping between each method and test which have been triggered. So let's say we have test case 1, which triggers that list of the methods on a backend, then the test case 2 with the set of all methods, then the test case 3, and the rest of them. So once we have this test to code mapping recorded within the Drill4j application, and on the next code commit, on the next code increment, once the developer makes the change within the application, you will receive the new build of the application where you can compare and take the information from it, and you basically can know that what part of the application have been changed. In comparing this change with the test to code mapping, which is already available within the Drill4j, you know which particular test cases should be executed in order to verify this change. And this is the test impact analysis in a simple terms. So what's next here? Once you have all the test cases identified and you know which of them should be executed in order to verify this change, basically you don't need to run all suite, you don't need to spend hours to execute everything. You can just reorganize or reorder this execution in order to start the required one with the highest priority. So basically shift them closer right to the code commit which made by the developer. And also, if you have the information which test cases were failing previously, you can also prioritize them to be executed first. And that kind of the approach gives you the possibility to find 95% of all issues, of all possible issues within your application just in 5% of the time you used previously. Sounds sweet. Okay, let's see how it works within the application itself. Here we see the application administration part, which should be deployed on your premises along with the application. The Drill4j is actually the platform which allows you to execute variety of the plugins which can read the information and basically instrument your application in real time to receive this information. So we use this information in order to read the instructions and collect the test to code mapping in real time within the Drill4j application. So again, it's open sourced, it's free, and can be deployed on your premises along with your application, unlike any competitors which you can find in the market. So again, what we see here is the drill admin with the installed plugin within the basic standalone application Pet Clinic, the example of the Spring application. So I will drill down into it and see the dashboard, which gives me information for the latest execution. But let's just quickly jump to the list of the builds which were received by the Drill4j. So we see the build number 1 with not much of the information right there, just because it's a starting point. It's zero ground and you need to start to collect the information. But let's see what we have here in details. It shows you that we have 25% of the code mapped with the test cases. We have executed 13 test cases already, some of them automated, some of them manual. Let's see in details. It also shows you that we have total 98, almost 100 of the methods. All the rest are zeros because again, it's a starting point. And you also can see the exact code base which is available within the application. Drill4j doesn't use any sort of the GitHub or GitLab and doesn't read the code from the storage, but it reads the instructions right from the application, which means that it uses the only source of truth, your application, and the most solid evidence which you can find within your code repository. Again, we see all the methods and how the packages, how they have been covered. We see how many methods it has, how many of them covered, and how many test cases were associated with that particular set of the methods. We also can jump to the list of the test cases which have been executed against that particular application, which of them are failing, which of them passed, and how many methods they did trigger during the execution. So that's what we call test-to-code mapping. But now let's jump to the new build, and let's assume for the build 1, that was the final point when all the testing was completed. For the build number 2, it's a 0 point when we just received the new application built from the incremental change made by the developer. So we have no information, and let's see what Drill4j gives us in that stage. So again, jump into the details, and simple dashboard shows us that we have 4 risks within the application, which means like we have one of new method which was introduced within the code increment, and 3 methods have been modified within the application. We also have the suggestion from the Drill4j which test cases 5 out of 13 we should execute in order to verify this change and minimize the risks. So which basically means that Drill4j helps you to control and keep at the same level the number of risks you can introduce within applications starting from today, and also will help you to minimize it with each and next execution. So let's see what we have here. We see that we now have 97 methods. One method is new and it marked as a risk, because currently, again, we're at the starting point, nothing have been tested. We also have 3 risks right there, 3 methods which have been modified but not tested. All of them collected to the scope of the risks, which should be reduced during your testing cycles. We also have proposals of the test or suggestion of the test which should be executed within your pipeline, and you can easily integrate it with your Jenkins job or with the testing pipeline, no matter which CI you use there. You can copy this CURL request in order to receive the JSON response, JSON standard response, and use it within the testing framework just to execute the proper set of the test cases. And we also can configure the quality gate, which can be used within your Jenkins pipeline in order to verify do you have any new risks introduced, how many test cases you skipped within the execution, and did you increase the coverage of the application itself. So let's just put 20 here, like 1 risk, okay, to be saved here, and 0 test cases to be executed. Save, and it shows us that currently at, again, 0 point, we have quality gate failed. But let's see what we can make here. I will switch to the Jenkins job. It's like prepared Jenkins job, which will execute the test cases against the application and will run the API test. So I will just click the build button. And while it's preparing the execution, let's switch to the Drill4j and see how it works right there. So as I said, we collect results right in real time. And once the coverage and the interaction with the application will start, you will see the record button and some of the visualization that work is in progress. So let's see how the mapping increase test by test case and jump into the scope which we currently have in active stage. So you see how the number of the test cases growing, how many methods have been triggered, and we also can see in real time how the coverage of the application is changing. So once it finalized, we see how much did it take to execute, how much test cases have been executed, what are the statuses, how did it cover. And the next step what I can make here, I can finish the scope. The scope is a kind of the special bucket, how you can distribute or split the phases of your application testing. So let's finish the scope of the API testing, and it will jump right to the overall build coverage, and let's see what it changes. Now we have only one test case proposed for or suggested for the execution, because the rest of them was executed according to the Drill4j ask. We have only 2 risks left there. 2 of them will have been covered by and retested by executed test cases which were proposed by the Drill4j, and still we did not met the quality gate. So what else I can make here? The pretty sweet part about the Drill4j that it can work not only with the automated test, but also it can be used with the manual test case execution. So for that reason, the only thing you have to have is the basic Chrome extension, which can be downloaded right from the Chrome magazine and deployed within your browser in a matter of seconds. So I just started, and it shows me that application, which is right now on the screen, have connected plugin of the Drill4j. It's online, and what I can do, just run the widget, which will stay on top of the page for the whole cycle of the testing and will help me to collect the information. I also can minimize and close it, but it still will collect the information in real time. So what I can do right here, I can just type the name of the test, or for instance the ID of the test case, which manual test case, which is executed now, and start the test. Let's jump to the application and see that we have the visualization that currently we record this session, which triggers the method within the backend, but no any action happens. So I will jump back to the application, click to the variety of the actions, open up the owner, edit the owner, and invoke the error, set something new, again too big, save, jump there, generate the error, back home. And we can see in real time how the scope coverage is changing, how many risks we did address by this test, and how many total methods have been covered by this test. So let's just finish the test and jump back to the application. And now we see how many of new coverage, or how many of new mapping, or how good we were in testing the application. So it shows us the overlap coverage between automated session and the manual session, and it shows us how many more methods have been addressed by the manual execution. So let me just finish that scope and see what happens with numbers. You see that now we have just 0 test cases which have should be executed or suggested by the Drill4j. So we are good in here, and we did retest all changes which were found. But we still have 2 risks within the application which should be implemented, which should be covered by the test cases. And here comes the next benefit of the Drill4j, since your developers and the QA engineers can have the single context, the single source of truth, and basically use this information to, a QA engineer can go to the developer and ask, okay guys, I have this method uncovered, which sort of the test case I should implement in order to cover that particular method. And it's pretty easily understandable for the QA engineer, the same like the code base of the application is super easy thing to understand by the developer. And in that case, QA engineer can implement the automated test to cover this change. The same way like developer can put or create a unit test in order to cover this change. So again, let's see what we have uncovered there and try to address, show resource, blah, blah, blah. Let's just try, not sure I will catch it, but start, see the list, find owners, add the new owner, turn to city, and the phone number. Add new pet. Okay, the error, home, finish the test. Let's see. We definitely did increase the coverage and introduce new part which were covered manually right there. But let's see, do we address the risk? No, we was not lucky. So anyway, in that case, we can address and change our quality gate. And let's define that 2 risks introduced within the application is good for us. So now we can see that the quality gate in that configuration will pass. And this is the go or not go decision for the Jenkins job or for your pipeline in order to decide whether we can go to the next stage of the pipeline or no. So again, let's just quickly summarize. Drill4j can suggest you the minimized set of the test cases which you should execute in order to verify introduced code changes. It can track modified methods, deleted methods, and new methods. So you can be sure how good you in covering of the modified code, in covering and testing newly introduced code, and even remove unneeded test cases which cover the deleted part of the application. You also can see how you cover your application with the manual and automated test cases, which basically give you the information how you can reduce the set of the manual test cases by removing those test cases which already covered by the automated set. For the next versions of the application, we will add this separate screen which will give you this information at a glance. You also can use the Drill4j as a quality gate within your pipeline just in order to verify how good you are in testing the application. Did you execute all the tests which are required, and have you introduced new risks within the application or no? And having the possibility to configure the quality gate, you can decide, are you like full tolerant for the new risks, or like you have 0 tolerance for the untested part of the application. And at the end of the day, if you have this minimized set of the test cases which can be populated right from the Drill4j application to the pipeline of your developers, they can receive and start the super small set of the test cases in order to receive the quick feedback for the code increment, which means that it will minimize the chance that developers will read off the test cases and remove them from the pipeline, or basically leave them for integration environment and just do not check the results of the testing. So that's the application. Let's switch to the rest part of my presentation. Okay, that was the demo of the application. Now let's see how it works from the technical perspective. It works, currently Drill4j works with the JVM-based application, so which means that for those applications which implemented with Java. So how the Drill4j works, the pretty important benefit which you should remember, that it doesn't affect your code base. Drill4j plugin will be connected right to the JVM by means of the native interfaces provided by the JVM machine, in order to receive the information right from the deepest level of the application and the Java machine itself. So Drill4j plugin uses this information and see and read the instructions, which helps to understand what part of the application have been changed, what was deleted, added, modified, and etc. It also can track the information which instructions and methods have been triggered during the execution, and also track the network access, or all the requests and responses received by the application. So once we have the Drill4j plugin installed within your application, it also can be switched on or switched off in a matter of seconds, which basically means there is no need for a separate stage within your pipeline where you test the application with the Drill4j. You just basically use it at the same QA environment which you have for the rest of the team. And it also allows you to, again, switch it off in a matter of seconds. Once you have Drill4j plugin installed, it will intercept all the HTTP calls requests from your tests, no matter it's API test or it's calls from the browser made to the server of the application. And Drill4j uses quite simple and standardized way to populate the data within the HTTP request. For that reason, we need the drill wrapper. That's just like a small modification or small extension on the side of the test cases in order to populate this information into the request. And Drill4j basically adds the HTTP headers which describe that this particular request belongs to the Drill4j, that particular request belongs to the session number X, and that particular request belongs to the test case number Y. And all the rest, like you can also track which particular user or QA engineer does that testing, or which particular, like any sort of information. Which basically means that for that reason you can use Drill4j not only for the API tests, but for any sort of the test cases, for API, for UI test cases, for security tests, for performance tests, and as I showed you, for the manual test cases right from your browser as well. And also Drill4j can work not only with the monolithic application, but with the microservices-based applications as well. It will have the connection to each of the microservice and will collect the information in one set of like a complex container, which will unify all the information from the rest of the group of the microservices which you have within the application. How you can use it with your test? It's quite simple. Once you have wrapper added, you just populate information about where your application, like Drill4j application, deployed, and what's the agent you want to use there. Basically, that's what once added works all the time. The rest part is which you should add within your Java application. No any rocket science here. You just add this line in order to start your Java application with the connected plugin. You also can do it once, and usually you can ask your DevOps or engineers to make it, and it will take I don't know, several minutes, 10 minutes, less than half an hour to make it, to put it in place. How you can use it in the pipeline? You just add the CURL request, which can take the information from the Drill4j, and it will return you the JSON file with the suggestion which test cases you need to execute. The same way you can use it for the quality gates, and Drill4j will return you the responses like, are you good to go or not good to go here. Okay, so how you can benefit with the Drill4j and usage of it at your project? First of all, it can help you to remove overlap test cases between automated test cases and the manual test cases, which will help you to speed up your regression by minimization of the manual effort and just leave that work for the automated test cases if it's already covered by them. You reduce the number of the manual test cases by the evidence and real means of the application coverage, not just because of the backbone filling. You also can minimize this regression itself and receive the super fast feedback on top of the code increment which was made by the developer, and this allows engineers to receive the results in a matter of minutes and avoid the situation where you have the integration infrastructure failing because of the number of the issues. It really saves the time and effort for the for shifting right development. Clear the evidence. Clear evidence and the single context. Again, you use the super solid evidence of the application coverage and how you address and map and test your application right from the application instructions, rather than by the prioritization and the feeling that this part was covered and this part was not. And it brings and creates the single context between the developers and the testers, which can easily describe for both sides which part of the application was untested and what should be done in order to cover and test this part of the application. And again, it's pretty secured. It can work and should work on your premises, basically deployed on within your infrastructure. No need to send the data outside of your internet somewhere on other servers, unlike other competitors which exist. And again, we are open sourced, we are pretty flexible and configurable, which means that you can even extend the Drill4j according to your needs at your project, and extend the Drill4j to work with your particular or super special technological stack. What we do offer, we can provide you some service offering there, a managed service by dedicated service team or core product team, which can help you with the POC stages, with the adoptions, with the more scaled way with the transformation of the way how you do test and how you build the continuous testing at your project. And also we can implement the customizations if that's required within the application for you. So for that reason, just contact me directly via the email, or you can also drop the request to the service desk of our testing competency center, and we can discuss it with you. We also can organize a separate demo for your client and show the capabilities and define the next step and stages which can be offered to the client. The main links to remember today is the Drill4j GitHub pages. You can find our landing page, you can find the Drill4j organization on the GitHub. We are distributed under the Apache license, which is free to use without much of the limitations there. And again, main things to remember. It should be used on your premises, and it can be used on your premises. It also right now works for the Java-based applications, and we also expect to have .NET capabilities to cover .NET applications in the next quarter of 2021. So that's it for today. Again, contact me in case you have any questions, and thank you guys for this awesome session. You are very welcome with any questions you have. Stay safe. Bye.
Hi everyone, thank you for joining my live demo session for the crowd testing capabilities of Test.io. If you have any questions, just leave them down below in the comments and I'll get to them after the demo session. So I would go ahead and just jump into screen sharing first of the platform that we have. We currently have 30,000 testers in our crowd that we use. Those are freelance testers that we use to conduct testing on most front-end facing websites and apps. For this, we developed our own platform, which is the one I'm showing in the screen sharing right here. This was developed together with Test.io's founding roughly around 9 years ago, so until 2011. And we use this as the infrastructure between us and our 40,000 testers that we have. For the demo, I would go ahead and in this case I have a demo account that's called Mazda, but these are all just demo tests. So with demo bugs, etc. I will jump into one of the products, showcase how to set up a test, what you need to set up a test, what the bug feedback looks like, as well as what the integration possibilities are, and then also go ahead and discuss the best use cases, as well as added capabilities that we have since we've been acquired by EPAM in 2019 in April, which is our TAS capabilities that also have to be, or also will be showcased in this case today. So I will just jump into, in this case, the Android app on the platform itself. I have the possibility to add any kind of products from iOS apps, Android apps, to different websites. So each individual team, for example, can manage their own feature list, their own bug list, and their own export to the bug tracker or project that they're using in this case. So I'll jump into the Android app in this case. I'll get to the dashboard. On the dashboard, I see metric data about the test that were run in the last 6 months. In this case, it's quite empty because the last demo test was run roughly 2 years ago, or not kind of 2 years ago, so you won't see much, but in general you will see data on the number of bugs that were found in the last tests, what recent tests, what open bugs are still up, and what features of your website or app platform are mostly affected or were mostly affected by those bugs. If we go ahead and are starting a new test now, I can jump into the default device tab where there already are quite a few devices added. So on the one hand, you have the default devices provided by Test.io, which is just a very general overview of all Android tablets and smartphones starting from Android 5 and 5.0 and higher are in scope. But you have the possibility, or the glory about crowd testing is really, as we have 40,000 testers in the crowd, and you know it usually from your own home, you have more than just one device. You usually have a phone and a laptop. Maybe you even have a desktop PC or a tablet. Hence, we have quite a huge device variety in our crowd, meaning you can get testing in on a lot of different device-wise combinations to ensure that your product works on a lot of different devices, screen sizes, OS versions, browser versions, etc. So what you can do here is, by managing your own default devices, is pretty much build your own kind of testing army, let's say. So I can go ahead and just edit. I don't have to add another device. I'll just edit one of those devices, and I can go ahead and select between smartphones, tablets, and wearables, and select the OS. In this case, it's Android, the minimum version. You can set this up until the latest versions. I think it goes down to 4.0, so you're quite flexible on what kind of range you would like to test on. So let's say 8.0 until the latest version. Select a vendor. You don't have to select a vendor, so I could leave this open, but it is possible to just go ahead and select a specific vendor like Huawei, for example, and either leave the model open or even specify what kind of model you are looking for, maybe the P20 Pro, for example, and just update the device. And then our testers will get invited according to this device selection, meaning we have a testing algorithm that first and foremost takes into account what devices you've selected and what testers do have the corresponding devices in the, or just own. And then the next step, the testing algorithm has filters according to the tester quality score, meaning all of our test activities tracked and is rated, and therefore we have a tester quality score in place, as well as different tags that indicate, for example, if you're a new tester, you will get a greenhorn tag. So we make sure that continuously for every single test cycle that you start, you have a maximum of 20% of greenhorn testers and always at least 10% of these top testers to join your test cycles. Meaning even if different testers join for test cycles every single time, which is highly encouraged because we want a fresh pair of new eyes every time on your platform, product, app, we still make sure that the tester numbers and the testers that join in total are continuous with how experienced they are and how much we rely on them, let's say. So the next step that we can go ahead and do, or the next step that's actually quite crucial in order to set tests up, is in this case the feature selection. So this is quite short here, as it was a very just a short presentation of what features look like. We focus mostly on exploratory testing, meaning we don't give step-by-step instructions in our exploratory tests to our testers. It's more of where can this feature be found, what does the feature. Registration, for example, would be I can log in, I can register, I will receive a confirmation email upon registering, and I can edit my data once I've signed up and logged in as well. Another thing that you can do here, which is our user stories, are type in, if I edit this here, I can type in some acceptance criteria here that are just one-liners that testers will try out on an exploratory kind of base. So like I said, it's not step by step, but it's more like, okay, I can log in via social media, and then up to 3 testers will take this user story and try it out, and you will get feedback with, yes, I could log in via Facebook and Google, for example, and maybe another tester encounters a problem with the Google login. But in general, what this delivers really is the possibility to get positive feedback on your happy paths. Meaning, exploratory testing usually only delivers bug reports when something does not work, but to enable you to really test through your happy path or your main user flows, you can list user stories here, and then testers will get back to you with positive feedback if it worked. So once these features are set up for the whole app, for the whole website, these can be split up. These can be as many features as you need, as you want. It's a very unique process, really depending on the product you have and on your testing needs and what kind of results you're expecting. You can go ahead and start a new exploratory test. So in this case, we have a few test types at our display here. We have a rapid test that delivers results in less than 4 hours, so quite quick. So for me right now, it's in this recording, it's 2 p.m. And if we were to start the test, then it would start till the next 4 hours. So at 4, and then would run for 4 hours until 8. So we have feedback already tonight, meaning you can already work or go live tonight if everything passes. What the rapid test does is really focus on critical issues, meaning the basic functions of your app, anything that's related to your revenue. If the app crashes, if I can't check out, if I can't go through the main user showstopper, anything like that, this will be reported here in the rapid test. To be able to deliver results in such a short time, what we do here is limit the amount of features that you can test. So it is definitely possible to go ahead and scope in for features and start a rapid test, but obviously the bigger the scope would be, the harder it would be for our testers to really dig deep into your platform and make sure that really everything is tested to make sure that you can go live tonight. So it's really used as a smoke test before you maybe want to push the next build live. The second test type that we have here is the focus test. The focus test is quite similar to the rapid test in terms of what kind of feedback it provides. It provides only functional feedback, but in this case, more than just critical feedback. I can decide whether or not I want to have low and high priority feedback and scope as well. The feature limitation here is the same as in the rapid test, but due to a different reason actually in the focus test. The name already indicates this is mostly used to make sure that you get very in-depth testing of a few features of your website. So if you have run an update on your payment methods, for example, and you want to make sure that your checkout process still works, or your card still works, for example, or the fast checkout works, or something like that, then you can run a focus test, really to give testers the time to get into those features and test them. This means in order to make sure that we have this time for the testers, we have the feature limitation in place, because testing the whole website or whole app focused is kind of a little contradiction. And this way the test runs at least for 8 hours, but customers can extend the time until 48 hours. So depending on how much time you can and want to give those testers to dig deep into those features, you can set it up here. The last test type that we have available here is the coverage test. The coverage test covers more than just functional feedback. So if we look on the right, it's not just functional bugs that are in scope, but you can ask for usability feedback from testers, content bugs, if links are broken, or if links don't redirect to the place that they should redirect to, don't work, or anything that will be reported, as well as visual bugs. So if any images are broken, are blurred, or if buttons are misplaced, for example, that will be something that you can find here with the visual bugs as well. All severities in the coverage test are in scope. So if we go ahead and try and set up a test in the coverage test, that's mostly used for regression testing. We can do that. We would provide a short title. This could be, I want to call it a demo test. I could write that in here. And in the next step, we add an environment to be tested on. So these will be saved to your account. So if I can either upload a file. This can be an APK file for Android, for example. And if you're testing on iOS, you can upload an IPA file. We have our own resigner, meaning you don't have to go through the test flight process. But if you like to use TestFlight, we also have an integration to TestFlight to make that possible. So you can go both ways, the classic TestFlight way, or you just upload an IPA and we make sure with our designer that testers can actually go ahead and test your iOS app. The other option here is plain URL. So you can type in, if you, for example, want to test your app on live, link the App Store link here, or the website you want to test. If there's a username and password to get onto the staging, then you can type that here as well. And if you need testers to connect your proxy to all use one IP or VPN, then we can set that up to avoid any kind of problems with a firewall being in the way of the testers joining a test environment. In this case, there's a App Store link here. Like I said, once you've set up an environment, it's saved here, so you can reuse it and you don't have to set it up every single time. In the next step, you would go ahead and select what features you want to test. So you can individually select, okay, I only want to focus on the account and registration and the dealerships maybe. Or you could also go ahead and test the whole app, because in this regression test, coverage test, excuse me, there's no feature limitation. The second thing you can also do here is decide what kind of feedback you would like to get. So per feature, you can decide if you want usability, content, functional and visual bugs, or if you maybe want to hold off of certain bugs. Really depends on how you work and what kind of feedback you would like to work with, and also decide what user stories you would like to test. So we can go ahead and pretty much do this for the whole app. And in the next steps, just give an overview to our testers, so you can define a goal of the test, meaning, okay, we want to describe what's most important to you, what testers should look out for, really, so they know what, not necessarily what to do, but if they know what's important to you, it's easier for them to obviously focus on those areas to make sure, okay, these really do work and we didn't find any, or didn't have any trouble with those. You can set features out of scope. For example, if you're testing on live, then you could set the customer, contact customer support out of scope, or placing orders out of scope. But also if you're just on a very early staging version, then you can just exclude certain areas just because maybe they're not ready yet to be tested. The last thing we have here are additional requirements. That means you have, you can pretty much put anything there for testers to be done as long as it's possible for testers to do it. They usually do it. That would be opening the website in incognito browser, deleting certain cookies, having the web console open at all times during testing. When they record themselves, you can actually read with them what's going on. So it's pretty open to whatever your testing needs are and whatever benefits you to identify the errors that our testers provide you with. The last thing you can do here is add attachments. That's usually mostly done for usability testing. If we, let's say, okay, need an A/B test of certain UI changes, design changes, for example, then you can upload attachments as well. Usability testing usually is done in the separate usability test though, because we have usability testers who love to test usability tests, and they obviously like see in the platform whether or not there's a usability test requested or coverage test, so they would most likely jump into the usability test. So usually for usability testing, as the setup is a little bit different as well, we would always encourage to just run a separate test instead of trying to kind of cramp it into the coverage test. If we continue through the test setup, next step would be selecting the devices. In this case, the default devices that were previously created are here, which can be customized for every single test cycle. The default is really just there to save time if you're testing on the same devices again and again, or the same device ranges, let's say. Then you set them up once and then you can reuse them, and if they're between tests, or in general, if there's just an update, then you just have to update one single device and it'll be saved with the future as well. For the testers, as we're a German company and we're based in Berlin and have most of our testers actually also located here, you have the option to test both in German and in English. This reflects the bug reporting language, meaning this doesn't mean that only English, native English speakers will join your test. This means that our global crowd will join and they will write the bug reports in English. For German, This most likely indicates that our testers have a certain level of German speaking, which probably means that they're native speaking. As selecting German here will mean that they have to write all the bug reports in German. If that's important or applicable to you, really depends on how your development team is working. But English is usually the default. The last step we have here is just to select when to test. So I can start a single test and want to get results. In my case, this is tomorrow morning. As for me right now, it's Thursday, so Friday 8 a.m. And the other option would be to run a recurring test. Oops, I just have to plug in my MacBook because I just saw I'm on 10%. So the other option would be to have a recurring test starting. So you go ahead, give the schedule a title, select the frequency that you want to test on. Maybe if you're in sprint, you develop every 2 weeks and you want this regression suite to run every 2 weeks, maybe Monday and Wednesday. It's really up to you. And then just select a starting time. As we mostly work with freelance testers, the best time to start tests or to run tests really is afternoons, evenings, and weekends, holidays, the time where usually your development team and testing team is off and does not work on a build. You can get more testing in between those gaps and make sure that your development cycle shifts more to the left, having tighter development cycles by using this time really to get in more feedback from testers. And the next day that your development team is back, then they can get to work and look through the bug reports and start fixing them. So this doesn't have to be 24 hours long. You can even just run it for 8. Maybe if we start at 6 p.m., then we let it run for 12 hours or even 14 hours, then it would be 8 a.m. And usually that's when you might start working, or you might start working earlier or later. What I now can do is I could technically submit this test, but I didn't give it a name. So in this case, it's grayed out, and save it as a template. So if I want to reuse this regression suite for other purposes, or if this is a single test and I might want to reuse this for anything else later, I can save it and I can set up the same test in seconds and then just take a few changes if applicable and then let it run. So this really is a time saver here. The other option that we have besides exploratory testing would be test case testing, which is kind of different in the setup. As you know, test cases give step-by-step instructions to testers that you go ahead and have them test through, and for each step they will give you feedback on whether, okay, this worked or this didn't work. So in this case, this was an automatic created test case based on a bug. So in this case, it was a bug. That was the that's put in here as the title. You can put in preconditions. In this case, the automatic created preconditions are the original issue, or the original device that it was reported on, and then it goes step by step through. Open the app. You can ask test questions to the testers, and they will answer for the step as well as require an attachment as proof. And then we go through the like log into the app, and in this case, you saw infinite loading, kill the app, try again, etc. So it's really step by step, very easy in terms of understanding. You can import those test cases via XLS and CSV. We also have an integration to TestTrial, for example, that you can use. So that you can use to execute your test cases. If I just click here and then click a test case here, I select, in this case, the default devices are selected again. I can select my devices here and then just go ahead and start testing. I'll just connect devices, select the environment, start dates, the bug language, give it a title, and then I could pretty much go. So that's also something that we offer. If the tests now run and you get feedback on the box, it will look something like this. So this test was run in 2019, has some example bugs I can show. So you would get an overview like this. So okay, what features were mostly affected? Are there any features that no bugs were found on? And what testers joined? In this case, 30 testers joined. Was just a very, very scaled down test. For our customer tests, our tester numbers are between 30 and 50, we've realized in our 9 years that we've been on the market now with this product that less testers might lead to lesser coverage, but more testers doesn't necessarily mean better coverage. It usually demotivates testers, as our testers are paid per bug and have a high incentive to find bugs. And if you join a tester with already like 200 testers in them, they found 60 bugs, it might be like, oh, maybe I don't have big chances to actually find something. So 30 to 50 is a really like our golden number that we've come across our 9 years that we've been doing this so far. So if I go into the bug list now, this will be split up in functional issues, usability, visual content, and known bugs if there are any yet. So if I click into a bug, in this case it's an app crash, so we marked it as critical. You can see that here as well, functional critical. I'll just have to move my team session to the left. In this case, we have metric data that's automatically created, just showing you, okay, how did we rate this bug, critical, functional. This is the tester that found the bug, as well as when it was found and the feature was affected. We always get bug reports, all are very consistent, as there's a certain way on how to fill out those bug reports that our testers have to do, otherwise they won't show up in the platform. We have a team leader with currently 25 team leaders at Test.io that act as a quality gate, meaning before any of these bugs will reach the customer account, the team leader has to go for every single bug and make sure that it adheres to our quality standards. That means filling it out correctly, adding the correct attachment, the bug itself making sense, being reproducible, etc. So in this case, we had an app crash for every single bug except for visual issues. So if a button is a little bit misplaced, we would allow screenshots, but for everything else, we require a video. So in this case, a tester will record themselves navigating the app and reproducing pretty much the bug that we've previously encountered, just to showcase, okay, this is what I did and this is what happened. So I'm not going to play through the whole recording because I don't think that's that important to us right now, but to give an idea, you always have a video. For the rest of the bug report, if applicable, so for websites, you would get an URL, the steps that led to the bug, with the actual and expected result. Last but not least, as this is an app crash, you will always get a crash log file as well. We don't allow any crash bugs without crash log files, both on Android and iOS. And the last thing here in the bug report itself is the device the bug was found on and the devices other testers like Max and Chandra could reproduce it on. So you get the feeling of, okay, it's not just a one-time issue, it also happened on different Android versions and different devices maybe. Now that you've seen a bug, there's a few things that you can see that here, how to interact with the bug. So this is already accepted. You could, before bugs are accepted, you have like a 10-day period to work for those bugs where you can accept them, you can reject them, maybe because they're known issues, for example, and you could also reject them because they're edge case issues, which is mostly important if you, for example, put Internet Explorer in scope or Edge in scope, and then it turns out, okay, a certain visual issue only turns out on Internet Explorer 11, and you might not want to fix it, then you could reject the bug as well. And you can also, before the bug is accepted, get in contact directly with the tester who submitted the test to ask any questions in regards to having a better understanding of the bug that was reported. Now that the bug is accepted, you have a few other options here. You can still mark it as known, you can like it, and the other points here are the export. So in this case, we don't have an export setup, but you can export to mostly all common bug management tools from Jira on both server and cloud to GitHub, GitLab, Asana, Trello. There's quite a few. I think we have like somewhere between 15 and 20 complete out-of-the-box solutions for bug trackers. But even if you don't use one of those, then we always offer a one-way sync with the bug tracker, so you can actually export the issues to your bug tracker and your development team can work with them. The last button that we have here is a confirm button. So let's say you accepted the bug, you exported the bug, and your development team says, okay, we fixed the bug. You want to make sure that the bug's actually fixed without taking time out of the day of your developer, who then has to get up, get a similar device. In this case, it was a Huawei Y6 on Android 8.0. You might not even have that similar device. You might go ahead and get the developer to, especially if they're home office, maybe pick their own device up. So for example, for me, that would be the Samsung Galaxy S20, and then try and see if the bug still happens on your own device, which takes time and is kind of a little bit of annoying work to do when you're in the middle of coding. So what you can do here is click one button, and an automatic test case will be created. So I say, okay, the environment will keep the same, English fine. This is automatically created, and I just go ahead and submit. And in less than 30 minutes, so really fast, you get feedback from a tester on either a similar device, or you can even specify and say, I want to make sure this is really the Huawei Y6 on Android 8.0, for example. Then you can specify that here as well. And you get feedback in less than 30 to 45 minutes on whether the issue was fixed or not. So it's quite a handy tool that if you, for example, have the Jira plugin, you can also trigger off Jira, which is quite nice. For the integration part, I think I already talked a lot about it, but I'm still gonna quickly brush over it, especially if you're wondering if you have a certain bug trigger that we have an out-of-box solution for, or what this kind of looks like. We have an integration to Slack, for example, as well as obviously bug tracker and test case manager integrations, and an API that you can technically use to do a lot of integration work yourself. So for bug trackers, like I said, there's quite a large list of bug trackers that we support. And if I jump into the instructions, then you'll see, okay, it's a 5-step process from selecting your bug tracker to gaining access, mapping the project, selecting a project, then mapping the fields of the project and confirming it. And then you can pretty much go ahead and already export bugs from Test.io to your bug management tool. The other thing we have here is the test case manager that you can add a connection for. So in this case, if you're working with, or if you're planning to do test case execution, you can go ahead. Right now we support TestRail and X-Ray out of the box. You can go ahead and pretty much the same process, and then start exporting those test cases from your X-Ray or TestRail and getting them executed by our crowd. Yeah, that is pretty much what you can do with the platform and what the feedback looks like. So if I click on any other bug, like I said, you will pretty much see the same, as that's just our standard of reporting. This really helps a lot with device coverage. It's quite fast. Our tests run in about 24 hours, where you get the final feedback on the platform. So really, in order to tighten your development cycles and have a shift left over the weekends, holidays, and during the nights, you can get testing in on a lot of different devices and make sure that your product is stable when you need it to be on staging, on live for apps, webs, and mobile. What, since we've been acquired by EPAM in April 2019, also changed, if you've maybe previously heard about us or worked with us previously, is that through our collaboration with EPAM, we've now also have the chance to not only use our freelance crowd, but also use an EPAM tester crowd to get testing in. This means if I now jump into a short PowerPoint, one slide PowerPoint, you can see that we have our freelance testers here, which I talked about in most of this meeting, which is real-world testing at some real devices. You can start in as fast as 2 hours, have 24/7 testing in. And they usually focus on exploratory testing for consumer-facing apps with up to 50 testers per cycle. So like I said, the 30 to 50 testers is kind of our golden mark. The model we have for that is an unlimited exploratory test as a flat rate with a fixed monthly fee. What we now through EPAM also can offer are EPAM employee testers, meaning we have badged secure EPAM testers that EPAM has employed and they work for us pretty much. And we can use them to have complex test cases and scenarios both written and executed. We have access to, for example, QA automation engineers to help you with automating your existing manual test case suite to get it on track with QA automation, for example. They're contracted this way. You can contract for capacity and only pay for what you use. So we have like a floor and a ceiling model where you say, okay, I want to use between, just an example, 160 testing hours a month up to 300, meaning you only have to pay in that framework for what you use. So only if you use 160 in December, for example, you only pay for the 160. But in January, if you have a sudden spike or a release is coming up and you suddenly need more testing or more testers, then you can just flexibly scale up until the ceiling, which is in this case, in my example, 300, and say, okay, this 1 month we need 290 testing hours, and you can just do that, pay that, and next month you can then again see if you only need 160 or if you need to scale up to any certain point. So this is a really flexible model. This really helps that you don't have to staff for 100% of capacity. And what you get also with those flex testers is a dedicated test manager. So as obviously managing those people is a task and takes some time, and you need someone to onboard these testers if they're joining flexibly and then leaving flexibly as you need them. You have a dedicated test manager. Their job really is to interface with the project, with the people that will be staffed for your project, and manage the output. So they make sure that people who join to test for you, either way, if they're freelance testers from the tester crowd or if they're batched EPAM testers, they will onboard them on the project and make sure that everyone is working as intended. Then the intended output is actually created. So these dedicated test managers will be the ones that will mainly then, in that model, work with the test.io platform that I've just showed and make sure to then see, okay, do we, for this project or for this single task, do we use the tester crowd, or do we maybe need to involve some EPAM testers? They can flexibly switch between test case execution and as well as exploratory testing. So it's quite a flexible approach. We do offer, when you need EPAM employee testers, we always offer this in this flexible model with the test manager. But if you're only focusing on the exploratory crowd testing, then it is also possible to be done in a self-service model, meaning you have the same view that I had right now when I was on the platform and moved around, and you can set up your own tests. So it's really only if you need those specialized testers that you can flexibly staff up and staff down, then the dedicated test manager comes into play. But if you're looking to have front-end facing apps tested by real world conditions, our freelance crowd in this case, then you can also do it in a self-service. So both is kind of possible. The last thing that's down here is also an optional core team. So if you say, okay, the dedicated test manager in this case is a fractional time-based resource, but we really want some people to be with us 40 hours a week, then you can do that here as well. So you have a core team of maybe a task manager and a automation lead, and then the rest of the team will be flex testers that can be scaled up and scaled down just according to your needed capacities. So those are the two main models that we offer, one only being a freelance tester crowd, and the other one adding more flexibility and adding these batched employees with more specialized knowledge about topics like accessibility testing, QA automation. They can actually write test cases, not just execute them, and all this kind of good stuff. Yeah, that was so far all that I will present today. Thank you so much for listening to all of this. If you have any questions, just sound them off in the chat. I'm not sure, sound them off or sound them to the side, and I will get to them and answer any questions that you might have. So thank you very much, and have a great rest of the ZED today.
Hello everyone again. I think we can start our presentation. So As originally in the description of presentation was written that we cover only services testing, but I think we can cover a little bit more topics and look from dark and light side on GDI tools. I think I don't need a representation because it was done before on previous sessions. So I'm Roman Iodev. I'm working on the set of tools for test automation in St. Petersburg office. And today we will cover 3 tools. Two is first GDI Dark and GDI Light. This is tools for services and light version of GDI for UI automation testing, and GDI Lightsaber. This is our library that used in all our tools and frameworks, and you can use it for any type of coding or development, and not only in testing. This is like Apache Commons or something like this. Okay, let's start from GDI Dark. This is a framework for GDI HTTP testing. And what is this about? What made difference of this framework from other competitors? First of all, we have we call it a service object. This is like page objects for services. So you can describe your application, your service in separate class, set up all methods that it have, types of these methods, set up the domain, and in the test just use these methods and do some validations with responses. You can have this simpler naming in the method's name, so you can just write M for shortening code. You can set up a list of different parameters and variables for your methods. For example, content type, headers. You can set up a method type like get, post, put, and other things, and some other parameters that has a typical method. This is how can look the typical service object, and of course, as UI objects in GDI, you can initialize it with just with one simple line: init your service. You can see here that in dark blue, you can put parameters in your methods like %s and the name parameters, and you can use these parameters, then you call these methods later in your tests. So here you can set up something like template for your method. And you can see that in the title of this slide mentions Swagger and BaseDL. One of the profits of this service page object service model is that we plan to generate this thing from the already existing models that provided by developers, like Swagger model or BaseDL for Microsoft tool services. This is not done yet, but we have plans to do these things, and most of the test engineer work related to setting up the service model will be done automatically. So as with is in previous session demo for UI objects, you can just generate your service object and then write the test. So a little bit around about the test, how it will look in GDI Dark. You just can call your request. So like write my awesome service method status call. And you can put some parameters here if you have them in the template for your methods, or you can just leave it empty. As a result, you will get a REST response, and you can do some things with it. You can have some simple validation, like response is okay. This means it has status code 20, 200, and it's okay. Or you can validate some other things like error statuses. You also can change your validations and say, is response okay, and body have some things in parameters. This is one more example related to response. You can also validate status code types. You can validate body, and you can see that this line like body equal to are pretty similar to things that we have in REST assured, if you are familiar with it. And yes, the GDI dark based or powered by the REST assured, and you have it in its heart, and you can get access to the REST assured in any part of your test. So you can validate your response using REST assured validations. You can set up your request using REST assured services specification. But also we have some additions to REST assured to do simple validations for statuses, for some other things, something like this. Of course, as you remember from the different previous session, all our tools support the entities-driven testing approach, and you can set up the entity for the method. This is like some kind of business entity, for example, user for both these methods, get and end user. And in test, you can write something like add user, send my user. And in this case, this object from your Java code will be transformed in JSON and send it to the REST method, to your service. And you can do the same thing from other way. You can just get the entity from the service. So you call method get and say that I want to get the body of the response as my entity user, and you will get the object that you can operate in your test. For example, you can assert it, or you can just use simple asserts from TestNG or JUnit and do some operations with this object, like validate its URL, headers, and something like this. All this stuff you can describe in your business object and manipulate with it in your tests. In addition to these service models and responses validation, we have a simple solution to do performance and load testing in the services tests. And you can just validate that method is alive, or you can load your service with during some period with a list of methods. For example, here we will bombard our service with getInfo methods during 1 hour. You can put here a list of the methods, and they will be randomly thrown to the service. And you can validate some simple results like a batch response time, number of fails, number of requests, and so on. Now we have it just in a simple way, but in future we plan to extend these abilities and add ability to provide here some plans for loading operations for some kind of scenarios, how load service will operate with your tests and do it during some timeout. But for now, we have just simple implementation, and but it can cover most of the common things that you want to have in your services testing. One more thing related to our framework for services testing that we have already defined features in BDD language, and you can use these things for your manual QA and analysts, so they can write tests, service tests in BDD style and know nothing about coding, something like this. In general, I not recommend to use BDD for services testing, but sometimes we have setups in Commons in projects that we haven't test automation engineers and need to validate services. So in this case, you can use the GDI Dark BDD approach. Here, how we'll look the typical service test, for example, and all these features are already implemented, and you don't need to write implementation for them. You just can write these feature files and run these tests. This is one more example with some data providers in the lines. You can have something like this. And as a result, when you have all these tests, your automation engineer, your manual QA can just click something like run button and run these tests, these scripts. I think this can be useful for in some cases, but I want to tell once more that this is not recommended for automation, for real automation of services, because in any case, BDD this is additional layer, and you will have some problems here. If you do really big services testing, this is the main part of your activities. And of course, we have BDD like features for load testing. With our model for load testing, you can write some load tests in human readable specification. Let's summarize all stuff that I mentioned above. The GDI Dark is the framework for services testing, which have object service model for your service. We have a list of simplifications for request and response validation and sending. We have performance testing here out of the box. You will have the detailed logging for all your actions, like what requests are sent and what responses you get. We have some BDD approach around it, and this can be used in some cases. And all this stuff are powered by REST assured, and you, in any place of your test, you can call the REST assured on your sponsor request and do some stuff. Maybe we're not implemented now in, for example, GDI Dark. So for more details, you can see our GitHub. And I think that's all about this theme. If you have more questions, I will answer on them at the end of our session. This is the dark side of GDI, because backend is something like hidden stuff on application. And if we look back to the light side for UI, we have some solution much simpler than common GDI. We call it GDI Lite. The main purpose of GDI Lite, this is also a UI framework, is to introduce his ability to introduce the GDI profits in products that already have a lot of Selenium tests and you want to write these tests. Unfortunately, GDI originally can be used only if you starting your test automation framework from the beginning and you haven't much tests on Selenium or Selenium. And here you can just change your dependency from Selenium to GDI Lite, and all your page objects that are written in Selenium you have the elements, list of the elements, and all other stuff will work with GDI Lite. As a result, you immediately will get profit like logging that you have in GDI, like more endurance for your tests, and you also will have auto download feature for the driver, so you will not think what's the latest version you have and where to place the driver and something like this stuff. Of course, you will have ability to initialize all your page objects with one command, but you also can do it for each page object separately. And as extension to your Selenium tests, you will have ability to add more complex entities and elements like dropdowns, forms, tables, and pages in future, and we'll have like some kind of hybrid with Selenium-based tests and GDI tests in one solution. And you can step by step moving to the GDI and reducing code that you have in your tests. Here, main features listed around the GDI Lite. We have much less elements. Main elements is UI element. This is implementation of interface web element, and because of that, you can have the same page object that you write on Selenium UI list. This is implementation for list of web elements, and you also can have drop-downs, forms, and web pages. Just 3 elements, complex elements, for now in GDI Lite. Also, you can use like standard locators for your elements, or you can use our locators like CSS, XPath, or text that reducing your code in page objects. Okay, let's look a little bit deeper in the elements. What is the UI element in GDI Lite? If you have just the element in your tests, you will get all abilities that have the elements, Selenium build element. But you can change the element on UI element, and as a result, you will get the element, all features, and some more features that, as we know, are used also on projects around the Selenium. This is some JavaScript code used for testing in Selenium, and we moved it in the methods of this element. So you can do the click using JavaScript. Sometimes this is useful when, for example, element is not visible, or some other stuff on page deny you to click on the element. You can set the text in the element, and this method works a little bit more smart than just send case, and can set up text in value of the element and in the text field as well. You can get the text from the value element. This is also a more smart version of getText, and you can get it from the value or from the text value or text text part of your tag. You can set the attribute. As you know, in Selenium you can only get it, and this is pretty common JavaScript code for setting attributes, but we just put it in the method, so you don't Google it then you need it. You can select the element, and this is the ability that you can use not only the locators for your elements, but the template locators. As you remember from GDI, you can put the %s in your locator, and later put the value that you want to get from this locator. This is really useful for some menus, for some tabs, or list of similar elements like buttons or something like this. You can set your value in the text field, and this method works a little bit different to the simple send case. It firstly clean the element and then send case. So you will be sure that only this text will be in the text field. You can move to your element using show. So if it is not in your visible area, the GDI light will move the screen to this element. You also can scroll up, down, left, or right in your screen using accordance methods, and you can highlight your element on the page, adding the border around it, and you can set up the color, or by default you can leave this parameter empty, and it will be bordered with red color. Next wrapper is around list of web element. This is your list. If you change list of element to your list, in addition, you will get ability to get elements by the text. For example, you have checkboxes or radio buttons with some text, and you can say, I want to get, I don't know, blue radio button, and then click on it. You can do the select on the text by text or by index. This is like select find the element by index or by text and then click on it. You can get the value for all lists separated by the comma. You can find first or last element or first or last that suits some condition. You can do the things that can be done using streams, these lists, but in simpler way. You can do filters, so you can do some selects or mapping the elements. Also, we have some additional actions like if do and if select. For example, you can find all elements that meet some condition and do some actions with them, or transform them as in some way and get the result of transformed elements. For example, you have a list of, I don't know, numbers, and you want to get only positive number, only, for example, positive numbers, and I don't know, multiply them on 2. You can do this using if select. You can do for each as the method of your list. You can validate is any of element suit to some condition, or all of the elements suit to some condition. For example, you do some search in the search line, and you want to validate that all elements in the list have the search word in as a part of the result. You can also do the copy of your list from some place to some other place, and you can do some many changes to your list. So, for example, if you have a list of some lists, or each element of the list can be changed to list, you can do as a result the aggregation list of all these elements. This is can be done using select menu. So the other way how you can use the lists in GDI Lite, this is the list of section, and this is like the elements in the original GDI. You can set up the sections or section like page object, and for example, here you can see in the bottom left part, you can see the search results in Google for GDI, and this is some kind of complete section with title, with link, and this description. You can set up the entity page object for this element and have the list of search results, for example. You can get the elements by the name after that and operate with just one section. You can get whole map of these elements and do the stuff that you can do with maps, or you can get all your elements as some entities. So, for example, here we can have the list of entities like search result that have three fields, three string fields, title, link, and the description, and you can do something with these entities. when you get all profits from changing your dependency to GDI Lite, you also can refactor your code and implement more complex elements, for example, dropdowns. In GDI Lite, we have only one element for all types of dropdowns, like multi-selectors, dropdowns, or combo boxes, where you can input text and select the text. We have only a dropdown. You can use the complex annotations for it, or you can, for simple cases, you can just use equal way to initialize your element. Of course, we can't avoid our good feature in GDI forms, and you can put extend form on your page object and remove all code related to submitting this form, operating with this form, validation about it, and so on. You can just fill the form using your entities, or you can grab the data from this form as some entity. For example, I don't know, user or something like this. If form already filled, you can get the entity and, for example, assert it with some expected value. So standard page objects in GDI can look like like in Selenium, but also you can add the site after that. You can add the annotations for URL and domain for your pages, and do all stuff that you have in GDI, and step by step refactoring your code and remove unnecessary code from your tests. So you can improve your code, Selenium code, step by step. And you can see that for initialization of elements, we use pretty the same naming as in Selenium, and we tried in GDI Lite to follow the same naming as in Selenium in all cases where we can do it. But you can, with initialization in GDI, you can initialize not only one page object, you can do it also. But the site also with all pages that it contains. So you can remove all your page objects initialization and put only one initialization line in your setup method. And of course, you can not to write extends from the page on your page objects in GDI Lite, but you can do it. And if you do it, you will get for free all the methods related to this page. So you can remove them from your tests or from your page objects if you have them in page object. And in addition, we have some more things related to pages, except back, forward, refresh, and other things that I have in WebDriver. You also can get the HTML code of your page object, or you can do the zoom on your page to some factor, for example, lower on your page to, for example, 50%, or you can zoom out to 200% or something like this. So this is really useful sometimes when you want to do screenshot, for example, or want to validate some element that's not in the screen. But for elements that are not in the screen, you always can use show method in the UI element. Let's summarize the things that we have around the GDI Lite. This is the simple solution for improve your tests writing on Selenium, but also can be used as a standalone solution without Selenium tests and from the beginning on the projects. It has a simpler interface and less level to go in the project, and you can have less majority for your test engineers to use GDI Lite. But in the same time, you will get all profits that you have in GDI, like stability, like detailed loggings, and so on and so on. And you can do the step-by-step improvement of your framework that already done before. You can remove legacy code and do your code better in more views. This is all related to GDI Lite, and I want to cover one more topic. This is our library, GDI Lite Saber, that used in all our frameworks. I think this is a really interesting library, and you can use it in many situations. And even if you want or can't use GDI, for example, on your project, and forced to use, I don't know, Selenium or Selenite or something like another, or you have special services tests, you can use GDI Lite Saber for your entities, for your classes, page objects, and or classes, objects, and so on, to do your code simpler and more effective. Let's observe some features related to GDI Lite Saber. This is the list of these features, and I think I don't need to read them, and we'll go through them on the slides. So the first thing, maybe you know, in Java we have from Java 8, they have the feature like Lambda expressions that allow you to use methods as the variables and put methods into methods attributes, do them and do the stuff around them later. In standard Java, we have a bunch of interfaces, and they have different namings, like these consumers, separators, predicates, functions, and other. This is around, I don't know, 20 methods for different interfaces of your lambdas. And these methods covered only methods up to 2 parameters in them. So you can't do the lambda expression with 3 methods, with 3 parameters in your method or in your function. And we think that we can do a simpler solution for this. We implement list of interfaces for lambdas. We have a list of interfaces for actions. This is methods that not return results, and a list of methods for functions from 0 input variables up to 9. I think this will cover almost all cases that you have in your real-life development, and you can use these interfaces in your application. They have same naming for any number of variables, and you can easily remember what you want from your interface. Here are some examples. For example, you have some click method that can be changed during implementation, and you can just write JAction click and initialize it with different lambda expression. This is the function action with 1 parameter example, and the next last one is the example with function with 3 parameters. One more thing, do you know, I think you know, in Java we have strings for manipulating with list elements. And typical situation, for example, looks like this. For example, we have a list of some numbers, and we want, I don't know, to get only even numbers. For doing this, we need to write something like this code. You will transform it, your list to string, do your stuff around the elements, and then collect back to the list or some other array or something like this. In GDI, we can do it much simpler. You just write filter And as parameters, you have list and the lambda for do the stuff with each element. We have in linkutils, we have a list of actions that can be done. For example, you can do also map and change all your elements with some template. For example, add the number and do the string as a last example. Or you can, for example, validate is any of element that you have in list suit to some condition. Also, we have the stuff related to first, last element that suits some condition. You can copy your list. You can get the element from the tail of your list or validate equality for your list, no matter what order have the elements, for example, or some other stuff. If you're interested, please look on the linkutils in GDI Lightsaber, and you find more interesting things related to the list operations. One more thing is the data class. I already showed it in the previous session for GDI. We use this class in all cases where we have forms or other business data entities. And this class are introduced for better operation with the data. So you just write extend data class, and you will get pretty good toString method for your objects. You will get ability to asset your objects on the quality of their fields. You can get your class as the map and operate with it as the map and do some other stuff. So, for example, this is the simple data class, a lot of variables, and you don't need to write any type of constructors for different combinations of these variables. You just write user set and set up the field that you want to set or list of fields that you want to set. One more util in our Lightsaber library is the print utils, and this is the library. This is utils to do pretty simple printing of your lists, of your objects, arrays, and some other stuff. You can just print this type of collections, or you can print them using some templates, some separators, and other stuff. Not big deal, but in most cases are really useful thing. And one more stuff I want to mention related in the GDI Lightsaber before we finish with this tool, I think, is our map class for operating with maps. If you know, in Java we have not really good implementation for maps. For example, hash map or any other map. The map interface. Unfortunately, you can't initialize a map, for example, with list of elements. You need to write code like new hash map and then write map put one's list of repeatedly putting the elements in your map. Because of that, you can't write just equal new map in your code, and you need to have some method to fill your map. And in GDI Lightsaber, we put the new class that's called map array, where you can simply initialize it with this list of values in one line, and you can put this in your code. And as a result, you can do all stuff that you can do with maps and some more stuff that that can be done with maps. For example, you can get the element, for example, second element from the tail. You can revert your map collection or list, and you can do all the stuff that mentioned above these maps in the link util. So you can filter them, you can select them, you can do first-class validations. You can find elements that meet any conditions for all elements conditions, and all other stuff that we have in link utils. So this is a really powerful map implementation, and you can use it in your code. And one more thing related to map array, this class implements the collection interface and list interface, and you can use the entities of this class in all your methods that get as parameter collections and lists. As you know, in Java you can do this because map interface is not implementing the list, and at the same time it contradicts the list, and you can't do your interface that implements map and list in the same time. So this is impossible in Java, in standard Java, and with Lightsaber you can do it simply. So I think this is all that I want to talk today in today's session. This is a list of links to our tools, GDI Original or GDI 1, GDI 2, GDI Lite, GDI LAC, the Dark framework, and our common communities for all our frameworks are put in GDI testing, and we try to put more and more templates for different project setups in GDI templates. If you have some questions, you can ask them now, and I try to answer on them. Just a second, I open the questions. Do you have any support for managing test data in Excel sheets in GDI Lite? Unfortunately, not for now. But if you have such experience, you can do the pull request in our framework, and we will be glad to approve it and add this ability. Or if we have time, we can do it also, because this is, I think, really useful for a list of projects. So my request here, if you have this work done on your projects, just share this experience and we will add it in GDI Lite. How do you handle stable elements in UI list filters in GDI? You can look here in the code how we do it, but our general solution that we have some code around any getting web elements in the code, and we have the cycle that ping elements on the page and try to get them and validate that they are okay, we can operate with them. If we get some exceptions, we can get have stale element exceptions or any other kind of exceptions. For example, I don't know, JavaScript problems. We ignore them and try to get this element during the timeout. Then the timeout is out. If we can do it, we will throw exception that element can be get from the page. So I think this is the answer. If not, you can contact me directly or look in the code. I'm familiar with retrofit. What are the advantages of GDI then? I think this is a question not so simple. Yes, I know the retrofit and know that they also have kind of service objects. And I think this is the other tool that also can be used for service testing. If we will talk about the differences, I'm not prepared now, and I need to do some list of differences. I think I will do it a little bit later, maybe in some other presentations. So follow our groups and look on the presentations that we have around GDI-HTTP. My answer is something like this. Could you please tell the difference between find-by and JFindBy? The difference is that we have list of differences in JFindBy. FindBy, this is the original Selenium FindBy, and JFindBy is developed by us. It has all stuff that have FindBys. In the same time, you can put a list of JFindBys on your element and use and have different locators for one element, and set up the category for your locator. This can be useful in a list of situations, cases. For example, you have your application on English and on Russian on some other locales, and your locators are related to the language. So you can put the list of locators on your elements. You will have one-page objects and just with list of locators. You don't need to have list of pretty similar structures for your page objects. And just write in the beginning that you want to run your tests in Ru group and then in English group. And the GDI will take only the locator that related to your group. One more case when this can be used, for example, you have some versions of your application, I don't know, 2.20, and you will move to the new completely new version of your layout for the application, for example, 3.0. And the functionality of your application are pretty the same, but the layout are completely different. You have some redesign on your code. And the request from the client that you need to support sometime the old version, and you have some releases here like 2.21, 22, and so on. And you, in the same time, you will develop the new version like 3.1, 2, or 3 versions. In this case, you also can put 2 locators on your elements and not duplicate your page objects. This is the main abilities for JFindBys. But also we have a list of other findbys like text or CSS XPath locators. Their main purpose is first is reduce the amount of code, and the second you can do you can write more simpler locators for getting text or getting IDs, some standard things from the text. As I see, this is all the questions from you. One more big question. I think we have time to answer it. Yeah. Does slide address cross-browser challenges like scrolling issue in Microsoft Edge and other stuff? I think we can look on it because the GDI Lite is not really a major framework. This is like about half a year history, and of course, maybe we can't cover all 3 key things, but the idea around our frameworks is to improve frameworks continuously. So our idea that if you have some problems, you just write the pull request, how to fix it, or write issue about it, and we implement it. If you, in this case, when the problem appear in one group, it will be resolved for all cases. We are really open to any changes. You can validate this particular case in your environment because you have some cases in Microsoft Edge. If you already have solution, you can just do pull request. If you haven't it, just write issue and we do this stuff by ourselves. Thank you for this question. When do one more question? I think we have time. When do the elements of the page object untitled by FindBy start containing the element? does it happen after initialization of the website? Yes, at the in-page factory template, then you initialize the site. All the elements under the site or under the page objects will be initialized. So if you do not do this, all elements are null and you will get null pointer exception. So this is the important thing, that you need to initialize your elements. Unfortunately, we have no ideas how to do it by default. If you have such ideas, except adding Spring here, we can do it. We can look on it, I think. So this is all questions that we have for now. If you have more questions, please write them me directly on or in our GDI testing group, chat group. Thank you all for attending. I really appreciated it. It will be good if you try these frameworks on your projects. We're really glad to get any kind of feedback from you, any solutions, suggestions, or just ideas to improve our framework. Please join us, and also we will really glad to see you as contributors, because this helps us to grow faster. This free sessions is more just like observable things. This is not the tutorials or something like this. We have education program internally in St. Petersburg, and if in the PAM you're really interested about this, you can request it and we can discuss how this can be done for your projects, for example. Or we have plans to do education program on the YouTube channel. We plan to have a YouTube channel for GDI, and here we'll have a list of short videos for each particular case, like complex elements, simple elements, I don't know, cross-browser, multi-threads solutions, and all other stuff related to UI testing and how we solve these things in GDI. So be informed in our groups. Let's assure that you join them. And I think together we can do the UI automation testing pretty much simple and do our job with more interest and be happy. Thank you all, and bye.